Number 4 says find the following trigonometric function values. So here we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Again, one of the special right triangles that we've talked about. So if we use the side lengths that we had earlier, we would have 1 as our hypotenuse, the short side was 1/2, and the long side was the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so if I want to find the sine of 30 degrees, here's my 30-degree angle. The sine would be opposite over hypotenuse, so 1/2 over 1 would just be 1/2. The cosine of 30 degrees would be adjacent over hypotenuse, so the square root of 3 over 2 over 1 would just be square root of 3 over 2. And the tangent of 30 would be opposite over adjacent. So that would be 1/2 over the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, we know from complex fractions, if they have the same denominator, those are going to divide out. So it would be 1 over the square root of 3, which I would have to rationalize, which would give me square root of 3 over 3. So that's going to be the tangent of 30 degrees. Okay, now we're looking at the sine of the 60-degree angle. Okay, if I look at 60, sine of 60 would be opposite over hypotenuse, so that's the square root of 3 over 2 over 1. The cosine of 60 would be adjacent over hypotenuse, so 1/2 over 1 would just be 1/2. And then the tangent of 60 would be opposite, so square root of 3 over 2 over adjacent over 1/2. And so again, with the complex fraction, we can divide out the 2's, and that would just be the square root of 3. What I want you to pay attention to is, look at my two angles. I have a 30 degree and a 60 degree. If we add these together, it would equal 90 degrees. That means that these two angles are complementary. Their sum is 90. Okay, look at the sine of 30 degrees. It's equal to the cosine of 60 degrees. They're both 1/2. And then also, if I look at the cosine of 30, that's equal to the sine of the 60-degree angle. These trig functions are what we call co-functions, and that's if their angles are complementary, then the sine of one angle would equal the cosine of its complement. Okay, so for example, if I had an angle, let's say the sine of 10 degrees, okay, well, what's the complement to 10 degrees? What would add up to be 90? That would be 80. So that would equal the cosine of 80 degrees. So as long as the angles are complementary, the sine of one will equal the cosine of the other. Okay, this also works for secant and cosecant and tangent and cotangent. And it's actually on page 2 of your handout. Number 5 says cofunction identities. Okay, these are some identities that you need to be aware of and be familiar with. It says the sine of theta equals the cosine of 90 degrees minus theta. Okay, that's just saying what I said before. If the angles are complementary, then the sine of one equals the cosine of the other. So we can say that sine and cosine are cofunctions, tangent and cotangent are cofunctions, and secant and cosecant are cofunctions also. So some of the problems you may have on the homework would be like number 6, find a cofunction with the same value as each of the following. So if I have the sine of 72 degrees, okay, the cofunction to sine is cosine. So I could say this would equal the cosine of 90 degrees minus 72 degrees, which would be the cosine of 18 degrees. So you could just subtract the angle from 90, and it would be the opposite function. Alright, what if my angle is in radians? Okay, if it's in radians, instead of 90 degrees, we would use pi over 2. Okay, so I would say my cofunction to cosecant is secant, so this would equal the secant of pi over 2 minus pi over 3. Okay, so instead of a 90, we just have pi over 2. If I'm going to subtract these, they must have the same denominator, so I'm going to write these with a denominator of 6. So that means this would be times 3. 3 pi over 6 would be equivalent to pi over 2. Multiply by 2, so that would be 2 pi over 6. So this would equal the secant of 1 pi over 6. Okay, so that's how you find the cofunction of an angle. And so again, on the homework, they're going to ask you to find cofunctions. Make sure that you know which ones go together. Sine and cosine are cofunctions, tangent and cotangent, and then secant and cosecant.